The forest swallowed her screams, but not her will. At 17, Ellie Carver was dragged from her bed, her father's hands like iron clamps, his voice a venomous hiss. No daughter of mine will shame this family. By dawn, she was alone in the Appalachian wilderness, abandoned for loving a girl, left with nothing but a backpack and a heart full of rage. 10 years later, Ellie stood at the edge of Black Hollow, Tennessee, her boots sinking into the same red clay that had clung to her skin when she clawed her way out of the wild. Her short brown hair was streaked with dust, her leather jacket scarred from years of survival. She wasn't the scared kid anymore. She'd returned, not for forgiveness, but for truth. The town hadn't changed. Same clapboard houses, same church steeples stabbing the sky, same whispers behind cupped hands. Ellie's father, Reverend Thomas Carver, still ruled Black Hollow with his sermons of fire and brimstone, his lies about her disappearance a shield for his sin. He told the town she ran away, a troubled girl lost to the world. No one knew he'd left her to die. Ellie's pulse thrummed as she slipped into the back of the church that Sunday morning. The pews creaked under the weight of the congregation, their eyes fixed on her father at the pulpit. His voice boomed, quoting Leviticus, condemning unnatural love. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms. He hadn't seen her yet, but he would.
Soon.
Her plan wasn't revenge, not exactly. It was exposure. She'd spent a decade piecing together the truth, surviving on the fringes, learning to fight, to hide, to live. She'd found others like her, outcasts who taught her how to turn pain into power. And she'd found Lena. Lena Harper was waiting outside, her long black hair tied back, her flannel shirt rolled up to her elbows. She was the reason Ellie's heart still beat, the one who'd found her half-starved in a roadside diner 3 years ago. Lena's quiet strength, her soft Georgia accent, her unwavering belief in Ellie's mission, they were the tether that kept Ellie from unraveling. "You sure about this?" Lena had asked that morning, her hazel eyes searching Ellie's face. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "I've been gone too long already," Ellie had replied, her voice steady but her chest tight. Now, as she stood in the shadow of the church, she felt Lena's presence like a heartbeat outside her own. This wasn't just her fight anymore. The sermon ended, and the congregation spilled out. Ellie stayed in the back, her eyes locked on her father as he shook hands, all smiles and sanctimony. Then he saw her. His face froze, the color draining like water from a cracked bucket. "Ellie," he whispered, the word barely audible. She stepped forward, her boots echoing on the wooden floor. "Hello, Father," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. Heads turned. Whispers grew. "Miss me?" The air thickened with tension. Thomas's eyes darted, searching for an escape, but Ellie's gaze pinned him like a moth to a board. She'd waited 10 years for this moment, and she wasn't here to play nice. "You told them I ran away," she said, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "But we both know the truth, don't we?" A woman gasped. A man muttered a prayer. Thomas's jaw tightened, but he forced a smile. "Ellie, you're not well. Let's talk in private." "No," she said, stepping closer. "You don't get to hide anymore." The crowd parted as Lena slipped inside, standing at Ellie's side. Their hands brushed, a silent vow. Ellie felt the weight of every eye, every judgment, but she also felt the fire in her chest, the one that had kept her alive in the wild. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for every kid like her, every soul this town had crushed under its righteous heel. 10 years ago, you left me to die, Ellie said, her voice rising. You drove me into the mountains, told me I was an abomination, and left me with nothing. But I survived. And I'm back to tell this town who you really are. Thomas's face twisted, his mask slipping. You're lying, he spat. You always were troubled. Troubled. Ellie laughed, sharp and bitter. You're the one who lied to cover your tracks. You're the one who couldn't face his own daughter loving who she loves. The crowd was silent now, the air electric. Ellie pulled a folded piece of paper from her jacket, a letter she'd found in her father's study years ago, one he'd written to a church elder, admitting what he'd done but justifying it as God's will. She'd kept it all this time, waiting for this moment. She held it up, her hand steady. "This is your confession, Father. Want me to read it out loud?" Thomas lunged forward, but Lena stepped between them, her presence calm but unyielding. "Don't," she said softly, her voice a warning. He froze, his eyes wild. Ellie's heart pounded, but she didn't falter. This was just the beginning. She'd come to tear down the lie that had defined her life, and she wasn't leaving until it was ash. The church doors slammed shut behind Ellie and Lena as they stepped into the humid Tennessee air. The crowd's whispers followed them like a swarm of bees, but Ellie didn't look back. Her father's letter burned in her pocket, a decade-old secret now a weapon. She could still see his face, pale, cornered, unraveling. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Lena's hand found hers, grounding her. "You okay?" she asked, her voice soft but laced with worry. Ellie nodded, though her chest felt like it might crack open. Confronting her father had been the plan, but standing in that church, feeling the weight of 100 judging eyes, had ripped open scars she thought had healed. They walked toward the edge of town, where Lena's old pickup waited, its red paint chipped but reliable. The plan was simple: release the letter to the local paper, let the truth spread like wildfire. But Ellie knew her father wouldn't go down quietly. Thomas Carver had built his life on control, over his flock, his image, his daughter. He'd fight back, and he'd fight dirty. As they reached the truck, a voice called out, "Ellie Carver, you hold up right there." It was Sheriff Boone, a burly man with a gray mustache and a badge that might as well have been a Carver family heirloom. He'd been her father's friend since Ellie was a kid, always at Sunday dinners, always nodding along to Thomas's sermons. His eyes narrowed as he approached, his hand resting on his holster. "Sheriff," Ellie said, keeping her voice even. "Something I can help you with?" Boone's gaze flicked to Lena, then back to Ellie. "Heard you caused a scene in church. Your daddy's upset, says you're stirring up trouble with lies. I'm gonna need you to come with me." Lena stepped forward, her jaw tight. "She's not going anywhere. She's got every right to be here." Boone's lip curled. "This don't concern you, miss. Step aside." Ellie's pulse spiked, but she held her ground. "I'm not a kid anymore, Sheriff. You can't just haul me off because he says so. Or, did he tell you what he did to me 10 years ago?" Boone's face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Doubt, maybe. Ellie seized it. "Ask him why he drove me into the mountains and left me there. Ask him about the letter he wrote, admitting it all." The sheriff's hand twitched, but he didn't draw. "You got proof of that?" Ellie patted her pocket. "Right here. And it's going to the paper, unless you've got a good reason to stop me." For a moment no one moved. The air was thick, the cicadas hummed the only sound. Then Boone stepped back, his shoulders sagging slightly. "You watch yourself, Ellie. This town don't take kindly to troublemakers." As he walked away, Lena let out a breath. That was too close. "He's just the start," Ellie said, climbing into the truck. "My father's got half this town in his pocket. We need to move fast." They drove to a small diner on the outskirts of Black Hollow, a place where the coffee was weak, but the booths were private. Ellie spread the letter on the table, its creases worn from years of being folded and unfolded. The words were damning. "My daughter's sin cannot taint this family. I did what was necessary, leaving her in God's hands." Her father's signature sprawled at the bottom, bold and unapologetic. Lena read it silently, her fingers tracing the paper. "This is enough to ruin him," she said. "But it's gonna hurt you too, Ellie. You ready for that?" Ellie stared out the diner window, at the hills that had nearly killed her. "I stopped being his daughter the day he left me out there. I'm ready." The diner's door jingled, and a woman slipped inside, Clara, a reporter from the Black Hollow Gazette. She was in her 40s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense bob. Ellie had tracked her down weeks ago, knowing Clara had a reputation for digging into stories the town wanted buried. "You got something for me?" Clara asked, sliding into the booth. Ellie pushed the letter across the table. "This is the truth about what happened to me, and I want the whole town to know." Clara's eyes widened as she read, her pen tapping the table. "This is big, Ellie. But your father's got influence. You sure you want to take him on?" "He took everything from me," Ellie said, her voice low but fierce. "I'm taking it back." Clara nodded, tucking the letter into her bag. "I'll need to verify this, but if it checks out, I'll run it." Front page. As Clara left, Ellie felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The truth was out of her hands now, a spark set to ignite. But her father wasn't the only one who'd feel the burn. Black Hollow was a small town, and secrets like this didn't just destroy one man, they tore through families, friendships, lives. Lena reached for her hand under the table. "Whatever happens next, we're in this together." Ellie squeezed her hand, the warmth of Lena's skin anchoring her. "I know, but I'm scared, Lena. Not of him, of what this'll do to us." Lena's smile was small but steady. "We've faced worse, and we'll face this." That night, they stayed in a cheap motel, the kind with flickering neon signs and thin walls. Ellie lay awake, listening to Lena's steady breathing, her mind racing. The letter was just the first step. Her father would come for her. Maybe not with his own hands this time, but with every tool he had. The church, the sheriff, the town's loyalty. She'd survived the wild once. Now she had to survive Black Hollow. By Monday morning, Black Hollow was buzzing. Clara's article hit the Gazette's front page, the headline screaming, "Reverend's Secret. Daughter abandoned for her love." The letter was printed in full, every damning word laid bare. Ellie and Lena stayed holed up in the motel, the blinds drawn, the TV muttering local news. The anchor's voice was grim. "Reverend Thomas Carver faces allegations of abandoning his teenage daughter." Ellie's stomach churned. She'd wanted this, but seeing her pain splashed across the town felt like standing naked in a storm. Lena sat beside her, her hand a steady weight on Ellie's knee. "You did the right thing," she said. "No matter what they say." The motel phone rang, shrill and insistent. Ellie hesitated, then picked it up. Clara's voice crackled through. "Ellie, you need to lay low. Your father's holding a town meeting tonight at the church. He's calling it a prayer for healing, but it's a rally to save his skin." Ellie's grip tightened on the receiver. "What's he saying?" "He's denying it all," Clara said. "Claims you forged the letter. Says you're troubled. Maybe even dangerous. He's got half the town eating out of his hand." Ellie hung up, her jaw clenched. "He's turning it around on me," she told Lena. "We need to be there tonight." Lena's eyes widened. "Ellie, that's a bad idea. You walk into that church, it's a lion's den." "I'm not hiding," Ellie said, her voice sharp. "He doesn't get to rewrite my story." The sun was setting when they pulled up to the church, its parking lot packed with cars. Inside, the pews were full, the air thick with tension. Thomas stood at the pulpit, his face a mask of wounded righteousness. "My daughter has been led astray," he said, his voice trembling with practiced grief. "She's spreading lies to tear down this community. But we will rise above her hatred with God's love." Ellie pushed through the doors, Lena at her side. The crowd turned, gasps rippling through the room. Thomas froze, his hands gripping the pulpit. "Ellie," he said, his voice tight. "This is a house of God. Don't defile it with your lies." "You're the liar," Ellie shot back, stepping into the aisle. "You left me in the mountains to die because I loved a girl. You wrote it down, signed it, and now the whole town knows." A man in the front row stood, his face red. "You're a disgrace, Ellie Carver. You can't come back here and ruin your father's name." Others shouted agreement, their voices a rising tide. Ellie's heart pounded, but she held her ground. "I'm not here to ruin him. I'm here to tell the truth. He abandoned me, and he's been lying to you all ever since." Lena stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "She's not alone. I'm with her, And I've seen what she's been through. You can't ignore the truth just because it's ugly. A woman in the back stood, her voice shaking. Is it true, Reverend? Did you leave her out there? Thomas's face twisted, caught between fury and fear. She's confused, he said. She's always been troubled, and now she's dragging this poor girl into her lies. The crowd erupted, some shouting at Ellie, others at Thomas. Ellie felt the room closing in, the weight of their judgment crushing her. Then a hand touched her arm. Mrs. Dawson, her old high school teacher, her eyes soft with something like regret. I believe you, Ellie, she whispered. I'm sorry I didn't see it back then. The words hit like a lifeline. Ellie nodded, her throat tight. Thank you. But the moment was shattered by a crash. A man, Boone's deputy, Ellie realized, had knocked over a chair, his face twisted with anger. You don't belong here, he shouted, advancing on her. Lena stepped in front, her stance protective, but the crowd was shifting, some moving toward them, others pulling back. Ellie grabbed Lena's hand, her voice low. We need to go. Now. They slipped out the side door as the shouting grew louder, the night air cold against their skin. The truck was 100 yards away, but headlights flashed in the distance, Boone's patrol car, closing in fast. Ellie's heart raced. Run, she said, and they sprinted, the gravel crunching under their boots. They reached the truck just as Boone's car screeched to a stop. Ellie, he bellowed, stepping out. You're not leaving this town until we settle this. Ellie slammed the driver's door, Lena already in the passenger seat. The engine roared to life, and they peeled out, dust clouding behind them. In the rearview mirror, Boone's lights faded, but Ellie knew he wouldn't stop. Neither would her father. They drove to a safe house Clara had told them about, a small cabin in the woods owned by a friend who didn't ask questions. Inside, Ellie sank onto a creaky couch, her hands shaking. Lena knelt in front of her, her eyes searching. We're okay, she said. We made it. For now, Ellie said, her voice barely above a whisper. But he's not done. And neither am I. The cabin smelled of pine and old books, a faint comfort against the storm brewing outside. Ellie sat at a rickety table, a map of Black Hollow spread before her, marked with places her father held sway. The church, the sheriff's station, the town hall. Lena brewed coffee, the hiss of the pot cutting through the silence. We can't stay here long, Lena said, handing Ellie a mug. Boone's probably got half the county looking for us. Ellie nodded, her eyes tracing the map. Clara's article shook them, but it's not enough. My father's too entrenched. We need more, something he can't spin. Lena sat across from her, her fingers tapping the table. What about the elder he wrote the letter to? If they're still around, they might talk. Ellie's mind raced. The letter had been addressed to Deacon Amos, a quiet man who'd always seemed uneasy around her father. If he was still alive, he might be the key. Amos lives out by the old mill, she said. If he'll talk, we could get him to corroborate the letter. Make it undeniable. They set out at dusk, the sky bruised purple over the hills. The old mill was a crumbling relic, its boards weathered gray. Amos's house sat nearby, a squat cabin with a single light burning. Ellie knocked, her heart in her throat. The door creaked open, revealing Amos. Older now, his hair white, his eyes wary. Ellie Carver, he said, his voice rough. Heard you were back. I need your help, Ellie said, stepping inside. The house smelled of tobacco and wood smoke. You got a letter from my father 10 years ago. About me. I need you to tell the truth. Amos's face tightened. He sank into a chair, his hands trembling. I told him it was wrong what he did. But he said it was God's will. I kept quiet. Thought it was better that way. Better for who? Ellie asked, her voice sharp. He left me to die, Amos. And you let him. Amos looked away, shame in his eyes. I was weak, but I kept the letter. Figured one day it might matter. He shuffled to a desk, pulling out a yellowed envelope. Inside was a copy of the same letter Ellie carried, her father's words stark and cruel. Take it, Amos said. Do what you need to. Ellie's hands shook as she took the envelope. This was it, proof from someone inside her father's circle. Will you testify? She asked. In public. Amos hesitated, then nodded. I owe you that much. They left the cabin, the weight of the second letter heavy in Ellie's pocket. But as they reached the truck, headlights flared behind them. Boone's patrol car blocked the road, his silhouette dark against the glare. End of the line, Ellie, he called, his voice cold. Lena grabbed Ellie's arm, pulling her toward the trees. Go, she hissed. They ran, branches snapping underfoot, Boone's shouts echoing behind them. The forest was dense, the darkness swallowing them as they wove through the trees. Ellie's lungs burned, but she didn't stop, Lena's hand tight in hers. They hid behind a massive oak, their breaths ragged. Boone's flashlight swept the woods, his footsteps heavy. You can't run forever, he shouted. Ellie pressed herself against the bark, her mind racing. They couldn't go back to the cabin, not now. We need to get to Clara, Ellie whispered. She'll know what to do. They waited until Boone's light faded, then crept through the woods, circling back to the truck. The keys were still in the ignition, a small mercy. They drove in silence, the road twisting through the hills, until they reached Clara's house on the edge of town. She answered the door in a bathrobe, her eyes sharp despite the hour. You two look like hell, Clara said, ushering them inside. Ellie handed her Amos's letter, explaining everything. Clara's face hardened as she read. This changes things. 2 letters. One from a church elder? That's a death knell for your father's reputation. But we need to move fast, Ellie said. Boone's after us, and my father's probably planning his next move. Clara nodded, already pulling out her laptop. I'll get this to my editor tonight. We'll run a follow-up tomorrow with Amos's statement. But you two need to stay out of sight. Boone's not playing games. They crashed on Clara's couch, too wired to sleep. Ellie stared at the ceiling, her mind replaying the chase, her father's lies, Amos's shame. Lena's hand found hers in the dark, their fingers interlocking. We're close, Lena whispered. He can't stop you now. Ellie wanted to believe her, but the weight of the fight was crushing. Her father's influence ran deep, and Boone's pursuit wasn't just about her. It was about protecting a system that had kept Black Hollow under control for decades. She wasn't just fighting her father. She was fighting a town. By dawn, Clara's follow-up article was live, Amos's letter front and center. The Gazette's website crashed from the traffic. Ellie's phone buzzed with messages, some from strangers offering support, others from old neighbors calling her a liar. The town was splitting, and Ellie was the fault line. The morning sun barely pierced the fog as Ellie and Lena huddled in Clara's attic, the only safe place left. The Gazette's second article had lit a match, and Black Hollow was ablaze. Social media was flooded with posts, some calling for Thomas's resignation, others defending him as a man of God. Ellie scrolled through her phone, her stomach knotting at the vitriol. Traitor, one comment read. You're tearing this town apart. Lena leaned over, closing the app. Don't do that to yourself, she said. Focus on what's next. Clara burst in, her face flushed. Amos is on board. He's meeting us at the town hall today for a public statement. But your father's called a press conference at the same time. He's trying to drown us out. Ellie's jaw tightened. Then we make sure Amos is louder. The town hall was a squat brick building, its steps crowded with reporters and curious locals. Ellie and Lena slipped in through a side door, Amos waiting inside, his hands clasped tightly. I'm scared, Ellie, he admitted, his voice low. But I'm here. You're doing the right thing, Ellie said, her hand on his shoulder. That's enough. Outside, the crowd swelled, a mix of supporters and detractors. Ellie spotted her father across the square, flanked by Boone and a handful of loyalists. His voice carried over a megaphone, smooth and commanding. These lies are an attack on our faith, our community. My daughter is lost, but I forgive her. Ellie's blood boiled. She stepped onto the town hall steps, Amos and Lena at her side. The crowd hushed as she raised the letters, her father's and Amos's. "This isn't about forgiveness," she said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. "This is about truth. My father abandoned me because I'm gay." He wrote it down and Deacon Amos kept his copy. "Tell them, Amos." Amos cleared his throat, his voice shaky but clear. 10 years ago, Reverend Carver told me he left Ellie in the wilderness to save her. I should have spoken up then. I'm speaking now." The crowd erupted, some shouting in anger, others in disbelief. A reporter shoved a microphone in Ellie's face. "Why come back now?" she asked. "Because no one else should go through what I did," Ellie said. "This town deserves better than lies." Across the square, Thomas's face was a mask of fury. He pushed through the crowd, Boone at his side, and stopped at the base of the steps. "You're destroying everything I built," he hissed, low enough that only Ellie could hear. "You destroyed me first," she said, her voice cold. "Now I'm just setting things right." Boone stepped forward, his hand on his holster. "This is getting out of hand, Ellie. Come with me, or I'll arrest you for disturbing the peace." Lena moved in front of Ellie, her eyes blazing. "You touch her, and you'll have to arrest me too." The crowd was on edge, phones recording, reporters scribbling. Then a voice cut through, a girl, no older than 16, pushing to the front. "I believe you, Ellie," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm like you. And I'm scared." Ellie's heart cracked open. She knelt, meeting the girl's eyes. "You don't have to be scared anymore. You're not alone." The girl's mother appeared, pulling her back, but the moment had shifted something. More voices rose, people stepping forward, some with stories of their own, others with questions for Thomas. The tide was turning. But Thomas wasn't done. He climbed the steps, his face red. "This is a witch hunt," he shouted. "You're all being led astray by a troubled girl and her lies." Amos stepped forward, his voice stronger now. "I saw the letter, Thomas. I kept it. You can't deny it anymore." The crowd surged, some pushing toward Thomas, others toward Ellie. Boone raised his hand, calling for backup, but the chaos was unstoppable. Ellie grabbed Lena's hand, pulling her back as the crowd closed in. "We need to get out of here," she said. They slipped through the side door, Amos following, and ran for Clara's car. As they drove away, Ellie looked back at the square, her father's figure swallowed by the crowd. She'd wanted him to fall, but seeing it happen felt heavier than she'd expected. Clara dropped them at a new safe house, a friend's farm outside town. Inside, Ellie collapsed onto a couch, her body shaking. Lena sat beside her, her hand on Ellie's back. "You did it," she said. "You got the truth out. But it's not over," Ellie said. "He'll keep fighting. And now the whole town's a mess." Amos sat across from them, his face weary. "I'll keep talking, Ellie. Whatever it takes." Ellie nodded, grateful but exhausted. The truth was out, but the war wasn't won. Her father's lies had deep roots, and pulling them up would take more than letters and speeches. She looked at Lena, her anchor in the storm, and felt a flicker of hope. They'd face whatever came next together. The farm was quiet, the only sounds the creak of the porch swing and the distant hum of crickets. Ellie sat with Lena, the night air cool against their skin. Amos had gone to bed, his promise to keep fighting heavy in the air. Ellie's phone buzzed with notifications, support from strangers, hate from neighbors, and a message from Clara. "Town council's meeting tomorrow. They're discussing your father's position. Be ready." Ellie set the phone down, her hands trembling. "They might actually remove him," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But what if it's not enough? What if he spins this too?" Lena took her hand, her touch steady. "You've already changed things, Ellie. That girl at the town hall. She spoke up because of you. Others will too." Ellie leaned against her, the weight of the day pressing down. "I keep seeing his face. The way he looked at me, like I was nothing. I thought I was past it, but—" "You're human," Lena said softly. "You don't have to be past it. You just have to keep going." The next morning, they drove to the town council meeting, a tense gathering in a cramped room at the community center. The council was a mix of old-timers and newcomers, their faces grim as they debated Thomas's fate. Ellie and Lena sat in the back, Amos beside them, his presence a quiet strength. Clara was there too, her notebook open, her pen flying. Councilwoman Harris, a stern woman with gray hair, called the meeting to order. "We've all read the Gazette," she said. "We've heard from Deacon Amos and seen the letters. Reverend Carver, you have the floor to respond." Thomas stood, his posture rigid, his voice calm but laced with venom. "These accusations are a fabrication, a personal vendetta by my troubled daughter. I've served this town faithfully for 20 years. I ask you to trust my character over her lies." Ellie's nails dug into her palms. She wanted to scream, but Amos touched her arm, a silent reminder to stay calm. Then Harris turned to her. "Ellie, you've made serious claims. The floor is yours." Ellie stood, her heart pounding. "I'm not here to tear down this town. I'm here because my father left me in the wilderness at 17 for being gay. He wrote it down and Deacon Amos confirmed it. I survived, but others might not. You can't let him keep preaching hate." The room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Then a councilman, a younger man with a kind face, spoke. "I have a son. He's like you, Ellie. I don't want him to ever feel what you did." Murmurs rippled through the room. Thomas's face reddened, but he stayed silent. Harris cleared her throat. "We'll vote tomorrow. For now, Reverend, you're suspended from church duties." The room erupted, some cheering, others shouting in protest. Ellie felt Lena's hand slip into hers, a lifeline in the chaos. As they left, Thomas caught her eye, his gaze burning with something darker than anger, desperation. Outside, Clara pulled them aside. "You've got momentum, but he's not done. I heard he's meeting with his loyalists tonight. They're planning something." Ellie's stomach dropped. "What kind of something?" "I don't know," Clara said. "But you need to watch your back." They returned to the farm, the air heavy with unease. Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that her father was planning a counterattack. She paced the porch, Lena watching from the swing. "We need to know what he's up to," Ellie said. "If he's meeting his people, I want to hear it." Lena frowned. "That's risky. Boone's still out there, and your father's not stupid." "I know," Ellie said. "But I can't just wait for him to strike." They devised a plan to infiltrate the meeting, held in a barn on the edge of town owned by one of Thomas's allies. Ellie and Lena crept through the fields at midnight, the moon their only light. The barn loomed ahead, voices leaking through the slats. Ellie recognized her father's voice, sharp and commanding. "We can't let her destroy everything. We take her down, legally or otherwise." Ellie's blood ran cold. Lena grabbed her arm, whispering, "We need to go. Now." But before they could move, a flashlight beam caught them. Boone's voice barked, "Got you." Rough hands yanked Ellie back, Lena shouting beside her. They were dragged into the barn, where Thomas stood, his face a mask of triumph. "You just can't let it go, can you?" he said, stepping closer. "You're forcing my hand, Ellie." Ellie glared at him, her fear buried under fury. "You're the one who's trapped, Father. The truth's out, and you can't stop it." Boone tightened his grip, but Lena twisted free, shoving him back. "Let her go," she yelled, her voice fierce. The men hesitated, caught off guard by her fire. In the chaos, Ellie broke free, grabbing Lena's hand. They ran, the barn's doors slamming behind them, Thomas's shouts fading into the night. They didn't stop until they reached the farm, their breaths ragged, their bodies trembling. "We're not safe here anymore," Ellie said, her voice shaking. "He's coming for us." Lena pulled her close, her arms a fierce embrace. "Then we fight harder. Together." Dawn broke over the farm, painting the fields gold, but Ellie felt no warmth. Her father's words from the barn echoed in her mind, legally or otherwise. He wasn't just fighting to save his reputation, he was fighting to erase her. Lena sat beside her, cleaning a cut on Ellie's arm from their escape, her touch gentle but her eyes fierce. "We need a plan," she said. "He's not stopping, and neither can we." Ellie nodded, her resolve hardening. "The council votes today. If they remove him, he loses his power. But we need to make sure they hear everything." Clara arrived, her car kicking up dust. "I've got news," she said, stepping onto the porch. "The Gazette ran a story on last night's barn meeting. Someone saw you two running and tipped us off. The town's turning on Thomas, fast." Ellie's heart lifted, but caution tempered her hope. "What about Boone?" "Under investigation," Clara said. "The state police are looking into him for abuse of power. Your father's losing allies." They drove to the community center, the air thick with anticipation. The council room was packed, standing room only, with reporters lining the walls. Ellie, Lena, and Amos took seats near the front, their presence a quiet challenge. Thomas sat across the room, his face drawn, his loyalists fewer now. Councilwoman Harris stood, her voice firm. "We've reviewed the evidence, letters, Amos's testimony, and Ellie's account. We've also received reports of intimidation by Sheriff Boone, linked to Reverend Carver. The vote is unanimous. Thomas Carver is removed from his position as Reverend, effective immediately." The room exploded, cheers mixing with shouts of outrage. Thomas stood, his face ashen, but he said nothing, his eyes locked on Ellie. She met his gaze, unflinching. This was her victory, but it felt hollow. He was still her father, and the pain of his betrayal cut deeper than she'd expected. Outside, the crowd spilled into the square, some celebrating, others cursing Ellie's name. The girl from the town hall, the one who'd spoken up, approached, her eyes bright with tears. "Thank you," she said. "I told my mom. She's trying to understand." Ellie hugged her, her throat tight. "You're brave. Don't ever forget that." As the crowd dispersed, Clara pulled Ellie aside. "The Gazette wants your story, your whole story. Not just the letters but what you went through, how you survived. It could help others." Ellie hesitated, the weight of exposing her pain daunting. But Lena's hand found hers, a silent reminder of their shared strength. "I'll do it," Ellie said. "For her. For all of them." Weeks later, the Gazette published Ellie's story, a raw, unflinching account of her abandonment, her survival, and her love for Lena. It spread beyond Black Hollow, picked up by national outlets, sparking conversations about acceptance and accountability. Thomas left town, his reputation in ruins, his lies exposed. Boone faced charges, his badge stripped. Ellie and Lena stayed in Black Hollow, renting a small house on the edge of town. It wasn't easy. Some neighbors still whispered, and the scars of the past lingered. But others reached out. The girl from the town hall, now openly herself, Mrs. Dawson, who started a support group for queer kids. Even Amos, who spoke at schools about the cost of silence. One evening, Ellie and Lena sat on their porch, the stars bright above the hills. Lena leaned against her, her voice soft. "You changed this place, Ellie. You changed me." Ellie kissed her, the warmth of Lena's lips a promise of home. "We changed it," she said. "And we're just getting started." The wild had tried to break her, her father had tried to erase her, but Ellie had returned, not just to destroy his lie, but to build something new. A truth worth living for, a love worth fighting for, and a town that, slowly, was learning to listen.